The bronze blade sings as it clears the scabbard by a mere finger's width, a sliver of cold light cutting through the smoke-choked air of the assembly. In the heart of the Greek camp at Troy, the atmosphere is heavy with the stench of burning bodies and the salt of the Aegean. Achilles stands before the king of men, his knuckles white. One stroke could end the war and start a massacre of kings. For 9 long years, the Greeks had bled beneath the high walls of Troy. They were a coalition of kings and brigands, held together by ancient oaths and the iron will of Agamemnon, a man whose shadow was as long as his lineage, but whose heart was brittle as dry bone. Achilles was their sword, the swift-footed terror who broke cities like dry bread and piled the Trojan dead like cordwood against the dusty earth. He was the golden promise of victory, yet he fought for a man he did not respect, under a banner that offered him nothing but a short life and a name that would outlast the stars. He had spent his youth in the dirt of foreign lands, winning prizes for a king who sat safely behind the lines. It was a dynamic that had simmered for a decade until the air itself turned sour and the gods looked down. A different enemy had arrived, one that no wall could keep out, the arrows of Apollo. A silent, invisible death drifted through the tents, rotting the lungs of heroes and blackening the tongues of the brave. For 9 days, the funeral pyres had burned without ceasing, the thick, greasy smoke of human fat clogging the nostrils of the living. Agamemnon had spurned a priest of the sun god, and now the god demanded tally. Achilles watched his men die not by the spear, but by the foul breath of a god's displeasure. He decided then to break the silence that fear had imposed on the other kings. He would call a council. He would force the king of men to look at the piles of the charred dead. He did not seek a throne. He sought the survival of the host. But beneath that duty lay a jagged, dangerous truth of ego. Achilles knew he was the only reason the Greeks were still breathing. He intended to use the plague as a lever to humble a king who had grown too heavy with his own importance. He armed himself not for a Trojan sortie, but for a verbal war. He donned the fine woven tunic of a prince, though his hands still carried the calluses of the shield rim. He looked at the grey sea, where his mother whispered of his fate. Better a short life with honor, he had told her once, than a long one in the shadow of a coward. He gripped the staff of the assembly, a heavy piece of wood studded with gold nails that signified the sacred right to speak. It was an ancient thing, passed down through generations, a symbol of the order that kept men from becoming wolves. He moved toward the center of the camp, flanked by the wise Nestor and Ajax. As he stepped into the circle, the sky turned the color of bruised iron. Agamemnon sat on his throne of polished cedar, his eyes narrowing as the greatest of the Greeks approached. The king's hand toyed with the pommel of his own sword, his face a mask of royal entitlement. Achilles took his place, the scepter cold in his hand. "Let us hear the truth," he whispered to the wind, "even if it burns the world down." The seer Calchas stands trembling in the center of the ring, his voice cracking like dry parchment. He speaks the truth that everyone knows, but fears to utter. The plague ends only when the girl Briseis is returned to her father, without ransom and with a hecatomb of bulls. Agamemnon's face turns the color of a guttering torch. He feels the eyes of the kings, the judgment of Odysseus, and the silence of Diomedes, pressing against his skin. To give her up is to lose face. To keep her is to lose an army. For Agamemnon, the army is a tool, but his pride is his skin. He is a man haunted by his own inadequacy, a king who knows his best warrior despises him. He looks at the dying soldiers and sees only a threat to his reputation. He explodes, his voice a roar that silences the gulls. He turns his venom on Calchas first, then wheels. He wheels toward Achilles. "You love this, don't you, son of Peleus? You love to see me humbled." The king's voice drops to a lethal hiss. "If I must lose my prize to save these wretches, I will have another. I will take yours. I will come to your tent and take Briseis, the girl you won in the dirt. I will show you that even the greatest warrior is but a servant to the king." The breach of the warrior code is absolute. In this world, a prize is not a thing. It is the physical manifestation of a man's honor. To steal Briseis is to strip Achilles naked before his peers. The world slows. Achilles feels the heat of the god-sent rage rising from his gut to his throat. He is the lion, and the dog is barking at his heels. His mind splits. One path leads to the king's throat, the other to obedience. He chooses the steel. The bronze clears the sheath. The assembly gasps. Death is a heartbeat away. Iron meets the air. Blood calls for blood. The king flinches. The warrior lunges. The air shivers with the weight of a coming regicide. Suddenly, a golden light only Achilles can see flares behind him. It is Athena, sent by Hera, who loves both men and hates to see them ruin the war. She reaches down and grabs him. She grabs Achilles by his fair, thick hair, pulling his head back with a force that snaps his neck taut. She whispers in his ear, a sound like the rushing of a mountain stream. She tells him that if he stays his hand, he will one day have 3 times the riches, 3 times the prizes. But she does not promise him peace. She preserves the man so the feud can destroy the army. She turns his violence into poison. Achilles realizes the gods aren't saving Agamemnon, they are weaving a tapestry of catastrophe. He slams the sword back into its scabbard. It is a sound like a closing tomb. "I will not kill you today," Achilles bellows, his voice echoing off the hulls of the black ships. "But I will kill your hope." He lifts the gold-studded scepter high and hurls it to the dirt. "By this staff, which shall never leaf nor branch again, I swear a vow. The day will come when the Greeks fall by the thousands beneath the hand of man-slaying Hector. You will tear your heart out with grief and rage because you could not honor the man who was your only shield." He turns his back on the king of men. He walks away from the assembly, away from the war, and toward the lonely shore. He does not go to prepare for battle. He goes to watch his friends die. The heralds walk with heavy feet toward the tent of Achilles. They do not want to be there. They fear the man who sits by the tide. They find him staring at the waves, his hands empty. Without a word, they lead Briseis away. She looks back at him, her eyes filled with a grief that he refuses to acknowledge. He lets her go because to fight for her now would be to acknowledge Agamemnon's rules of kingship. Achilles sits in the sand, his great spear planted beside him, unused. He is a man who has won every skirmish, but lost his soul to a single insult. He calls to the sea, a low, guttural cry of a child who has been robbed. Thetis, his mother, rises from the grey foam like a mist. He does not ask her for comfort. He asks for the ultimate weapon, a plea to Zeus to aid the Trojans. The cost is total. Achilles is no longer the protector of the Achaeans. He has become the architect of their ruin. He watches the smoke of the funeral pyres rise, joined now by the first cooking fires of the Trojan camp. He knows he could stop the coming slaughter with a single shout. He chooses the silence of the shore. He realizes that the honor he craved is a cold, lonely thing, found only in withholding his hand. The greatest threat to the Greeks was never the walls of Troy or the spear of Hector. It was the broken ego of the 2 men who were supposed to lead them. Achilles remains on the beach, a ghost in the making. He has chosen his path, and it is a road paved with the bodies of his friends. He has won the argument, but he has invited the storm that will drown them all. History remembers Achilles for his strength, but in the trial of the assembly, he learned that honor is a blade that cuts the one who holds it. Next, we witness the rise of Hector, the man whose death will ensure neither leaves Troy alive. Walk with us through the old stories. Subscribe to Saga Weaver, where ancient warriors face impossible choices.